Hello, everybody. I hope I'm audible. Okay, I can see some emoticons go up, so I am audible. I take that as a virtual yay to the beginning of the event. So, welcome everyone to the first legal open house of account aggregator ecosystem. There have been a couple of firsts in this year 2022. Uh, I see a good set of cross section of audiences, and the number is increasing. Cross section across different entities, and why not so? Because the topic deems this kind of attention. Legal open house for all entities, different regulatory types, was on our mind or has been on our mind for quite some time. And I'm so happy to see it come to life now. We have had common concerns across various legal foundation services. Of course, the common multipartite participation terms of Sahamati, grievance redressal mechanism, so on and so forth. And what better than getting all these or being able to address all these concerns on a common forum? So, without much ado, I will, get started with the session. To all of you who are attending, I would urge you to stay through the next 1 hour because we have some interesting sessions lined up. You will be able to view that in the schedule. And the last 10 minutes is dedicated to ask me anything question answer, so open question and answer. So, yes, without taking too much time, I will get our first speaker, uh, Mr. Pramod Rao, on stage. Anybody who is familiar with let me just, yes, yeah. So, anybody who is familiar with anything to do with legal, anybody who's familiar with business side would definitely be in the fully aware of Mr. Pramod Rao. He's an institution in himself, and we are so glad to have him as our keynote speaker today. Pramod is the Group General Counsel at ICICI Bank and also on the advisory panel of Sahamati. So, Pramod, I will not eat up on the valuable time that you have for our audiences, and I'll hide myself now. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to all of you. I know it is Friday evening, and I'm hoping that the next 1 hour keeps you both interested and enthused. Because again, to my mind, India is at the cusp of yet another financial technology revolution. To me, whether we look back in time and think of the time when the ATMs got interconnected with the NFS, the launch of IMPS, NEFT, RTGS, or for that matter, UPI. I think we've led the world in a lot of ways in how technology and finance can, work together. I think in the last few years, what we are actually seeing is a growth of what I would call a different, set of frameworks, which can only be called techno-legal frameworks. Whether one talks about Sahamati's account aggregator ecosystem or online dispute resolution, these are bringing together technology, law, and a lot of regulatory, attention to making sure that we get it right. So I will spend the next few minutes talking about both the account aggregator ecosystem, how I see the participation terms and how they have emerged, what can its future hold, but also what led us to creating it in the first place in that fashion. So let me begin on that note. One, I think what we need to recognize is that it is not just the RBI which was involved in creating the account aggregator ecosystem framework through its master directions. It actually leads back to the FSDC, the Financial Stability and Development Council, that comprises of all our financial sector regulators debating the issue, a technical working group which collaborated and which then led to this framework, which is unique in itself because it straddles all entities, all regulated entities in the financial space. So whether you are regulated by PFRDA, IRDA, SEBI, or RBI, this framework sort of bridges and brings together all of these entities. And the other thing which it does as a techno-legal requirement is really bringing together the flow of data once the customer has expressed her consent and in the manner desired by the customer. So that flow is something the account aggregators enable. And the two other constituents are the financial information providers and the financial information users. I know this audience is sophisticated, so I'm not going to spend too much time defining these three entities. But suffice it to say that the customer interacts with the A, will ask for data which resides in the customer's relationship, whether with a bank, insurer, brokerage house, or a pension manager. And that data, if the customer wants it moving from one place to another, one regulated entity to another regulated entity, the receiving entity is the FIU really. And again, the way RBI framework is created, it is meant to be a regulated entity by one of the four financial sector regulators. It's not meant to go outside of regulated entities at all, the data. And this flow, is what I think we are looking at as to how it would have been the best way to sort of make it operational, make it happen. So the technologists have done their work. They've built together the pipes which connect, the FIPs with the A's, with the FIUs, and I guess all of it will keep on getting tested even as the volumes that I'm watching have spiked across the usage. So it was left to the lawyers to sort of catch up on what this ecosystem was sort of doing. And amongst the things that we then understood is that there is a digital common good that is required, namely the addresses and the registry, which sort of captures each of the authentication devices, authentication addresses for the FIUs, for the FIPs, and for the A's. Sahamati became that agency or that central organization which stepped forward to say that they will host this registry. Uh, Equally to being able to know, that not just the RBI or the REBIT technical standards, but any other handoffs or handshakes that are required, getting enabled is something else again that Sahamati has been focused on. To us as lawyers, I think what we quickly understood is that any one consent request will minimum involve the four parties to the contract, and that includes the customer herself, but the A, the FIP, and the destination FIU. And each time to create such a contract, depending on which FIP the customer has her data with, and then to have it transferred to the A or transmitted to the A, and which then sends it to the FIU, would have been way too cumbersome in terms of the bilateral contracts that were required or would have been required. So the way we conceived of it was to saying that these bilateral contracts may just become the spoil sport for what the regulators and the policymakers desire in terms of moving of the data. So can we come up with something which actually allows us to have a single document that captures the roles and responsibilities of all the participants, exactly as RBI Master Directions intended? Can they be in such a way that there is fairness for each level of participant, each type of participant? So it doesn't matter whether I'm a large bank or a small bank. It does not matter whether I'm a RIA or whether I'm a A. It is that there is equal treatment if I am of a particular type, and that type is only three: FIP, FIU, and A. And I think that became the second sort of consideration of how the ecosystem terms should look like. And thereafter, for us, it was that every time there is a person who signs up into the ecosystem, there is an automatic creation of a contractual nexus with every other previous entity that has signed in. So there is no requirement, so as to speak, of these bilateral contracts having to be entered into. And the only example we could find is really in public international law for the lawyers in the room, something like how treaties operate, right? So UN or some designated secretariat receives the signature from the countries that have agreed to sign up into a treaty, and the treaty then is enforceable against all the other people who have signed into the treaty. So consider the ecosystem participation terms as really creating that kind of environment in the private contracting world. Thereafter, to us, making sure that indeed not just the contractual nexus was firmly established, it was also important to consider what could go wrong. And if things went wrong, how can we address them? Because it may not be a drop or a breakdown with one party. The customer could have an issue with the A, could have an issue with the FIU, with the FIP, or any of them could have issues with one another. And given the volume and the number of participants involved, uh, clearly we needed a sophisticated method of being able to sort through any grievances, issues, and so on. So there was a multi-tiered dispute resolution process also thought of. And just as the techno-legal framework that I mentioned earlier, ODR, we've actually taken that and brought it into the A ecosystem anchored by Sahamati as well. Uh, all of it has meant that indeed there is one common term. There are many of you who have expressed comments and inputs, and to me that is part of being part of the ecosystem. We need to deal with them. We need to figure out how to move to the next version. And I'm hoping that the journey has begun, but indeed, we should keep refreshing these terms to reflect what the ecosystem participants desire and what finally serves the customer's interest. With the fact that the regulators will be always, alert to anything which goes wrong, anything which is a misuse or abuse, and our duty as ecosystem participants is not to sort of let down either the customer trust or the regulatory imperatives upon us. So with that, let me just pause. I know we have in the sessions ahead more of these to be elaborated and talked about. And I will again join at the end for the Ask Me Anything session to also deal with anything further that you have. So with that, Ruchi, let me hand back to you.
Thank you, Pramod. Thank you so much. It has set a good starting point for what's coming ahead from Shalini and the rest of the panelists in the panel discussion. So, to everybody, I'm going to be ending this session. Like Pramod is going to be around with us for through this hour and join us back in the last bit, which is the Ask Me Anything session. I will be ending this session and starting another one in the next 10 seconds. So please do not click on anything. You will automatically move to the next session. Thanks. Stay around, please. Thank you, Pramod.